So should we start, Nikhil?
Yes, go ahead.
Good. So, hello guys. Yeah, as now we are, I welcome you to all to this roadmap to become a machine learning engineer event. As you all have seen in our poster, that this event is mainly focusing on the roadmap for becoming a machine learning engineer. In this event, if you are interested in machine learning, if you are into it, or you are just confused with it, so this event is just for you. In this event, we have Piyush Nikam as our guest speaker. We have Piyush Nikam as our guest speaker. He is a machine learning engineer at Qualcomm. He will be our guest speaker for the event. I and Hassan Jain, who are the ML lead of GDSC DeepCore, will be the host for the event. Okay.
Right, okay. Good morning, everyone. Just a little bit about the speaker. Piyush is a distinguished alumnus of our college from the 2016 CS batch, and later he went on to graduate from BITS Pilani with a master's in machine learning, where he focused his research work in adversarial machine learning and reinforcement learning domain. His research work recently got published Sorry. His research work recently got published in Springer, which is aimed at improving existing machine learning and deep learning models using reinforcement learning and adversarial learning techniques. Currently, he is working. Currently, he is working as a machine learning engineer at Qualcomm Corporate Research and Development Center, Bangalore. Prior to this, he has worked in NetApp Research and Development and Manhattan Associates, where he worked on various cloud and ML products. Now, Piyush, would you tell us a bit about your journey and maybe starting with your time at DY Patil?
Okay, let's start with that. So I would start. So I started my bachelor's journey in 2012, and yeah. So when I started, coding was very new to me because I didn't have any prior experience a lot on coding. So coding was quite new to me. So I started in the first year itself. So I started with basic languages that are C, C++. So anybody who's thinking that there are so many languages nowadays, what should you focus on? It doesn't matter that what language you're focused on in the beginning. What you are focusing on really is on how everything works. So you can pick C, C++ in the beginning, then you can move to Java, you can move to Python. So language is not a barrier. The thing is the fundamentals, how everything works inside and how you actually manage memory or maybe have the OOPS concept. Those things should be clear because every language would definitely follow that. So the fundamentals should be clear, and then you can actually start with other things. So I started my journey with C, C++, and initially I was very interested in coding and I wanted to learn that. So the starting point would be, so we don't actually, we actually see the outer external resources, but the starting point for me was that there are so many assignments in our curriculum itself. So as a computer science grad, we had a lot of assignments. So the starting initial point was I wanted to actually do the assignments myself. That's the biggest point. So if suppose there are maybe in my time, if suppose there are 22 assignments, we were split into batches and different batches were actually given a set, maybe a 10, 10, 10 differentiated sets. So, and people used to only focus on 10, not the 22 of it. So if suppose you want to expand your knowledge, then you need to do more than what is expected of you. And that moment of time, what I actually aimed at, that I wanted to cover everything, irrespective of if that is covered in my set or not. So I used to code it myself. That's the first thing. And if you don't get it in the first scenario, then actually you can try because you have the entire semester to complete that. So you can try more on that. But the only thing is that you should try yourself in the first place. So I was very interested in that. And the biggest thing that rather than going external and talking about lead code and other platforms, I actually started with the college curriculum assignments first. So I completed that. I used to complete that, and the focus was on that. And after that, once I was the fundamentals were clear, maybe in C, C++, then I started to explore Java. So during my college days, I actually there are a lot of workshops going on in college and all. So you should participate in that. That actually gives you a horizon that what is actually relevant to the market. And maybe if any speaker is there, you should actually ask relevant questions. That if suppose we are working on a cloud project, what kind of technologies you are working on? If you're working on a system design, what kind of technologies you are working on? So something like that. So I started with C++ and I then went on to Java. Now, the fundamental aspect of anything is problem solving that you cannot skip. So irrespective if you are a software engineer, if you're planning to be a machine learning engineer, that's totally fine. The fundamental is that the basics, that is data structures and algorithm, you can never skip that. So for me, in my case, I actually was very much interested in masters during my bachelor's itself. So I was preparing for GATE. So during my preparation, all these fundamentals were already covered with that. So data structures and algorithm. But even if you're not trying for masters, data structures and algorithms is so fundamental that you should at least give it a try in a proper way. In the sense, you should read few books. There are a lot of books. So if you don't like one book, you can switch to another. That's not an issue. But you should focus on that. Data structure and algorithm, you cannot leave it. Let it be any technology, let it be any domain, let it be any language, but you should focus on that. So I was focusing on data structures and algorithm, and that really helped me a lot. And apart from that, during my college days, there were a lot of workshops. So I usually like to take a lot of workshops. So I used to take workshops for my juniors as well. So I took workshops in C++, Java, OOPS concept, and maybe during the examination time, they had a lot of doubts related to assignments. So a refresher course on lab assignments and all that I liked. And one thing that I would definitely like to share is during your bachelor's. Now, see, now you may be interested in machine learning. That's totally fine. And based on the current trend and based on how things are going for machine learning, everybody would be interested in machine learning. But one point of advice is don't think that you would only be interested in machine learning. In college, you have a liberty to explore a lot of things. When I was in college, in bachelor's, I was not sure that what domain I would like to work on. So I was exploring everything. Let it be UI, let it be backend, let it be any technology. Explore everything. And once you have explored, only then decide that you what you really want to do. It may be possible that today you think that you like machine learning and you have left everything apart. But later on, how would you know that you don't like other things? Maybe you were better at that, or maybe you would have liked that. So in college, this is the time to explore. Once you are in the industry, you won't get a lot of time to explore. Only once you have decided to switch to a different domain, then you could actually work on and switch to that. But in college, you have the liberty. Nobody will stop you to switch between projects or switch between domains in every semester. Try it out. And once you try it out, you will definitely come to know. So if suppose you're starting from second year, so computer fundamentals, then explore everything. Do start with Angular, start with backend technologies, then go to ML, start with ML. And once you know that what your liking is, then start building on it. But one piece of advice is don't stick to one domain. Explore everything, then you will understand what you like and then go about it. So that's what I did in my bachelor's.
All right, that is really insightful. Okay, would you also tell us about how you got into Qualcomm and
Yeah.
how you got to your masters and then to Qualcomm?
Okay, so let's start. For that, I would need some points to be covered. So after my bachelor's, I was sure that I wanted to do masters, but the only point of consideration was I wasn't sure in which domain I should do masters. And I was thinking at that moment of time that if because put going to masters, you are actually not working in industry, you are working on research project and all, and even for that you would need to prepare for GATE. So there is a substantial investment of time. And what I was thinking that if I do that, I should be able to get a lot of it, as in I should have some focus that I would be targeting on this domain. It cannot be that I start masters, okay, let's see what happens, let's explore everything. So what I was thinking is that whenever I get that point that, okay, I want to stick to this domain, or I want to jump into this domain, or I want to specialize in that time I would actually look at for masters. So in 2016, during our college placements, I got placed in one of the companies, that is Manhattan Associates in Bangalore. So I went there and I was a software engineer there. So initially I got to learn a lot. So that's what the exploration part shouldn't stop. So even if you enter in the industry and if you say you only want ML and you're given something else, try to work on that, because that would definitely give you exposure. And in maybe a couple of more slides or maybe in our discussion, I will tell you ML is not very different from a software engineer. So if you're already a software engineer, it's very simple for you to switch to ML. But if you're only into ML, then you might have a difficulty in software, being a software engineer. So I started with that. So they had a monolithic application. So I don't know how many of you are aware of a monolithic application is, but just for simplicity for this session, let's think of a monolithic application as a very big bulky application that every logic is written inside that application, and anything that happens is one big application. So if suppose that application goes down, the entire stack is gone. So now what people are doing, they are actually transferring from a monolithic application to a microservices architecture. So I got to learn more about microservices architecture, and then I studied about it. Then they had an opportunity that, okay, you are a backend developer, that's totally fine. We are setting up a new team, and that's a very small team, and we want few people because these are new technologies. So we want somebody who is a full stack developer, not only a backend, and that was very new to me. So I started learning Angular that time. So yeah, that's the point. You shouldn't stop your learning. If you're given an opportunity, try to grab that. So I started learning Angular, and then I was very comfortable in Angular, so I was working on that. And based on that scenario, as I was in an firm which is actually working. So in the US office, they're actually working in ML domains as well. So in India, they were trying to set up. So that was around in 2017. So yeah, around that, they were thinking of setting up a small ML team in India. So they asked me, we are setting up a some very small ML team, and that would be around 5 to 6 members. Would you be interested in being a part of that? And I said, okay, I've never worked in ML yet, because in college it was only one research paper or two research paper, not a lot of hands-on. So I said, okay, I will definitely be interested because I already know the backend technologies, I already know the front-end technologies, and then the only part that I would need to work on, that would be the ML part. So if it's a computer vision application, I would be working on that. So theory part I would cover, but rest I would actually get on with what you would be developing. So their vision actually was that they could do inventory forecasting. They were actually thinking of AR and VR and a lot of NLP applications. But initially they were focusing on NLP applications. So initially what I did was to try a lot of frameworks, because initially when you start ML, it may be something that, okay, there's so much to do. There's theory, there's maths involved, there's programming, there's a lot. So initially I started with a lot of frameworks. So because I was working in an NLP application, I used pre-built frameworks. That is, you must have heard, or maybe if you have not, you can actually go and look at it. So it's Google's Dialogflow. There's Alexa skills. There is Microsoft Bot. So these are technologies so that you can actually create a virtual assistant. And what they were trying to do is they already had the product. So they were trying to integrate this virtual assistant in the product. So once I started learning that, it was not exactly the ML fundamentals over there. So we started with the framework already pre-built, and we were trying to integrate that into the system. Once we had done that, and then we actually saw what ML could do, that was the turning point. I knew that this is the field that I want to be in. And the biggest point was when you actually are actually using Alexa or maybe MS Bot, it's very easy to actually train the model, because there are few UI knobs that you just tweak in, there are few sliders that you just slide, and it just happens. But how do you know what the fundamentals are behind? How is the probability getting calculated? How is the model training, and what is happening? I was very much interested in that. And that moment of time, I knew that now I know what ML could do. I want to understand the fundamentals. So that was the time I knew that, okay, let's stick for 2 years here, and then I would definitely go for my master's, and I would be focusing on ML in my master's. So that was the entire motivation, that how I got into ML. And there's one point that if suppose I would have gone master's just after my college, maybe I wouldn't have deep dived into ML. Maybe I would have deep dived into cloud technologies. That is possible. So if you don't get it in one shot, don't think that you didn't get it. Just try, and maybe you were waiting because you wanted something else. So that's from my side.
All right, Piyush, that was really great. Your journey is fascinating. And we would like to know about your experience at Qualcomm right now. Like, what is it to be a machine learning engineer? So, would you like to tell us about it?
Yes. So, okay. So when we say a machine learning engineer, it totally depends on what kind of team you are in. It totally depends in what kind of company you are in. So what Qualcomm is doing, so Qualcomm is a semiconductor business. So they manufacture chips, you can say microprocessors that is being used heavily everywhere. So any mobile that you take, majority of the market share in India uses a Qualcomm chip. So now the thing is what Qualcomm is doing. Now Qualcomm already has a foothold in the semiconductor market. That means they have so many chips already in place in different edge computing devices. Okay, first of all, edge computing, I would actually explain that first if you don't know about it. So edge computing is any computing that happens on the edge. And what an edge is, then when we say a cloud system, that's on the cloud, maybe in the data centers. But when we say edge, that happens on the edge where the data is being generated. So you can think about edge as your phone. That's an edge device because that's in your hand where the data is getting generated. So that's an edge device. You can think about a smartphone as an edge device. You can think about an autonomous vehicle as an edge device. So any device that is on the edge, not on the main data center or maybe frameworks, that is an edge device. So Qualcomm has a foothold in that. Now, in their chips, a lot of companies are actually running machine learning algorithms. So what they decided, okay, if so many companies are already running machine learning algorithms, let's redesign our chips in a way that is very focused on machine learning so that machine learning algorithm performs best on our chips. So that is how they started. And India, they have an R&D center. So in the R&D center, they are working on a lot of things. There are a lot of things which I could tell. There are a lot of things which I cannot. So the things that I could tell is they have an ADAS platform. So ADAS platform, you can think about an autonomous driving platform. So when you talk about autonomous driving, it automatically entails a lot from computer vision. And then they are working on NLP technologies also. So in the day-to-day life, what we actually do, we read a lot of research papers. Then we get to know about the model. We study the models. Then we think about how to actually use the models in a way so that it's very fast and it could be put on an edge device. Because suppose if somebody, maybe a researcher has developed a model and they say that they have gained a very high accuracy, that's totally fine for the research paper. But once that model is deployed in your vehicle, you have fraction of second, maybe a microseconds in which you need to take decisions. And if that model takes maybe a 2 second gap or maybe a 3 second gap, that would be fatal. The car could actually meet with an accident that time. So that is why in from the deployability sense or maybe a real life use case, companies have to think about it. And that is what Qualcomm is doing.
Okay, that is great. Next slide, please. Right. Okay. So coming to the topic, could you tell us about what artificial intelligence is and what are its fields and which fields people could get interested in?
Okay. So this is one thing that anybody who's interested in actually even starting with ML should know, because the thing is, we get into ML and then we understand, oh, what is the difference? People don't know exactly what the difference is. So let's think about it this way. If we talk about AI, let's consider that's the whole superset. So if we are talking about AI, that's the entire superset. Then when we talk about machine learning, that's just one part of AI. That's not the entire AI. And when we talk about deep learning, that's a very small part inside machine learning. So when people say I'm doing machine learning, or maybe I can start with deep learning. Deep learning is itself machine learning. So that distinction has to be very clear. So what AI eventually is that you are just allowing the machines to learn. So you're training the machines so that they could learn themselves based on some past generated data. So how do you learn? So if suppose you make a mistake, you say, okay, I made a mistake. This was not a correct answer. This is the correct answer. And later on, you would remember that and try to not repeat the mistake again. This is what machine is doing. Based on the past data, it has learned on it, and then it makes some mistake, and then we correct that mistake, and the machine remembers that what mistake it made, and next time it won't. And this is how a machine learning training goes on, or a machine learning model works. So in a nutshell, you could think about machine learning, that's a part of AI, and deep learning part of machine learning. And when anybody says that should I start with machine learning or deep learning, there is no distinction in a place that you should always start with machine learning and then go to deep learning. You can directly start with deep learning. So what deep learning is, that's a very small part of machine learning. Whenever you want to teach machines to do something, and that method of way to teach the machine that is based on neural networks, that is deep learning. And whenever it's not neural networks, it's something else, that would be maybe machine learning. So if you're actually thinking about where to start, you can start anywhere. You have no issues. You can start with machine learning, you can start with deep learning. Yeah, definitely the fundamentals in both the things would be an intersection. So you should always start with the fundamentals. But then if you would like to actually go to deep learning first, that's totally up to you, and it can be done. So it's not that you have to cover a entire aspect of machine learning and then move to deep learning. Cover only the fundamentals and then you can move to deep learning.
So now, Piyush, as moving from artificial intelligence, now could you elaborate some of the like applications of machine learning and deep learning?
Yes. So actually, this slide, if you talk about applications, there are so many applications that we can cover all day. But let's
Yeah.
keep it very generic.
Yep.
So these are the applications that you see right now, and there are a lot of applications that you don't really see or you don't really notice, but everything is eventually happening from an AI perspective. So if you think about Google Ads, so if you think about Google, their main primary business is actually serving you ads. Now, how do they do that? They are actually monitoring what you like, what you don't like, and other things. And based on your preferences, they are actually providing you news. They are providing you different recommendations. If you think about YouTube, how does that work? If you see 10 videos, if you like few videos, YouTube algorithm automatically tries to maybe calculate which next video would you like, and how these algorithms are trained in a way that their main goal is to give you relevant information. First thing. The second thing is give you something so that you stay intact in the platform, or you remain on the platform, or you spend more time on the platform. So this is how they are working. So if we talk about Google, they have an advertising business, and ads business is really flourishing right now because all the small businesses usually take some part in this. So because they don't have that kind of money that they could actually spend on advertisement, so they use Google ads, Instagram ads, Facebook ads to actually connect to the direct end consumer. So Google ads is one fascinating thing. You can actually explore a lot of things. So if once we talk about Google ads, it's not one learning model that is working. There are tons and tons of machine learning model. Even on Instagram, if you see on Instagram, you must have seen sponsored ads or something. So there is no one machine learning algorithm running over there. There are tons of machine learning algorithm working and simultaneously to talk and interact with each other, and then based on that, giving you the right ad or maybe giving you the right post to look at so that you like the platform more or maybe you stay on the platform more, something like that. And let's talk about now autonomous vehicles. So you must have heard Tesla. So they are creating autonomous vehicles. Now, autonomous vehicles, when I say it's not only cars, you can actually think about drone technologies, and drone technologies are also being heavily used in certain places. And nowadays, if you see the camera and everything, so earlier it was a chopper, somebody was using that, and then the cameraman was holding it. But nowadays, if you see a drone technology and drone with a camera is used heavily everywhere. So autonomous vehicles is a fundamental place where you can actually apply a lot of machine learning algorithms, that is reinforcement learning algorithms, computer vision algorithms. Now, I won't name a lot of algorithms. Let's keep it very simple. But this is one place where if you start this, there is a deep requirement of machine learning and deep learning knowledge over there. And let's talk about one more. So let's talk about facial recognition. Now, this you may be aware of that when you open your phone, you unlock your screen. So you just press on the button, it actually scans your face. And then based on that, it would detect that are you the right person or not? And then maybe allow you to use a phone. That could be one thing. Then facial recognition technology, you must have seen tagging. So you tag your friends in many several photos. And most probably if you're using an Android phone or maybe if you're using Google Photos, whenever you tag people with their faces in your photos, eventually the machine starts learning and it will scan through all your photos and then ask you, is this the same person? So what they are doing, they are actually having a pattern matching algorithm. They are actually checking faces of different people. Pattern matching algorithm, I'm saying very generic or a very basic way. And when you actually go to facial recognition, there are very advanced models working over there. And then based on that, you can actually create multiple facial recognition algorithms to actually have for your use case. So one of the use case which we talked about, that was the phone. The other use case which we talked about, that was maybe Google Photos, but it could be used in CCTV cameras. It could be used in public transport. So there are n number of opportunities. So ML and AI could be used anywhere. The only thing that you need to consider is that could you leverage ML and AI in a better way in that use case? Yeah. And if you want to talk about recommendation systems more, then there's one company, that is Netflix, that is totally based on recommendation systems. Netflix is a company that heavily relies on AI. And why would I say that? Even the thumbnails that you see. So there's what is a thumbnail? So there are small rectangular boxes where you click, right? Those thumbnails are decided by machine learning. They don't create a thumbnail and give it to everybody. Maybe you are a person who likes more of an action movie kind of a person, then they would create all the thumbnails which depict some action that elicits some emotion that is action based, so that you are more, there's a higher probability of you on clicking that and watching that movie. So even the thumbnail, they are actually displaying based on ML. So they have recommendation systems, they have thumbnail matching, and based on your likings and disliking, you are recommended more movies of a certain genre, or maybe more movies of a different genre, something like that. But Netflix is one thing that they are heavily working on recommendation systems. So if you think about, there are so many companies in market right now. If you would have asked me maybe a couple of years back, there were big industries, only they were working on ML and not a lot of small players. But today, at this moment of time, there are so many startups, even in India, working on cutting edge technologies. So this is the best time to be actually working in this domain.
Exactly. The machine learning field is booming, as we all can see that. And these are a few other fields that are related to artificial intelligence. So could you talk about these?
Yeah. So once you actually go and study ML and then you move on to deep learning, then once you know the fundamentals of deep learning, the most broad horizon where you can actually start working on right now, or maybe research work is at a lot of domains, but there are two distinct places which are heavily being used currently. So one is computer vision, one is NLP. You must have heard the term, but let's talk about it. So when we say computer vision, what it is saying, as soon as I see vision, that is CV, you would be saying anything that deals with a camera, anything that deals with seeing an image and identifying what it is. So for a very basic or maybe a very simple example, let's consider that you are creating a classifier. Okay, if most of you are not aware of classifier is just a decision that if given an image, what to classify it as. And keeping it simple, let's create a classifier that given an image, it will tell you if it's a cat image or a dog image. So that's a very fundamental or a basic computer vision application, that you could just give an image, and based on that, computer would identify the entire image and then see, okay, this is a cat or this is a dog. Now, why are we leveraging machine learning here? This is a very simple use case, but why are we leveraging machine learning here? If you have coded, maybe in college or maybe otherwise, if you know programming, the most important part is that you follow certain logic or rules. Okay. Now, given your dog or maybe your pet, how would you form a rule that generalizes all the dogs in the world? It's not very easy. You cannot write 5 lines of code and just say, okay, this 5 lines, if everything matches, this is a dog. This 10 line, if everything matches, this is a cat. This is not possible because there are so many variations that just by certain set of rules, it's not possible. That is the only reason machine learning is being used, where you cannot leverage or where you cannot write identifying rules. If you have the data, you will ask the machine, okay, this is my data. Please run over the data and create your own rules and tell me the rules later on. I don't know how to formulate the rule. That is where machine learning comes into picture. So if we talk about computer vision, we have already maybe discussed the facial recognition part. So that's the camera, that you're recognizing something, that's an image or maybe a video or something. So that's computer vision. So if you're very interested in computer vision, you should know what computer vision is and where you can actually use it. What are the applications? Self-driving vehicles, you need to look at ahead, right? If there's a vehicle or not, backside if there's a vehicle or not, left, right, everything, the road, There are a lot of signals, a stop sign, a green signal, everything. So self-driving vehicles, machine learning is heavily being used, and that's computer vision over there. Now, manufacturing production lines, yeah, you must have heard Amazon's that entire warehouse, what they have developed, it's totally robotic and they do a lot of things with ML. So how do they do it? They are actually leveraging machine learning. So that's computer vision. Based on some camera, they are actually seeing the package, where should it go? And based on that, they are diverging that package to maybe some destination. And one use case that I could think of that when you write letters, right? Nowadays we don't, but at one point of time, people used to write a lot of letters, and on letters they used to have some address, right? Now, if there are millions and millions of letters coming each day, it's very difficult for a human counterpart that read the address and put it in a specific box or maybe put it in a specific postal chain. What US Postal Service did, they actually trained few algorithms which recognizes based on a camera, they just read the address and which recognizes what is the postal code and where should it be placed. And that is how they could actually solve the bottleneck, because eventually if there are maybe millions and millions of mails coming each day, you cannot keep on adding people and ask them to work and just expedite the work. At some point of time we would need automation, and what they did, they used computer vision for that. And now nobody is using mails a lot, but at one point of time when they were, that was the use case for it. Now let's talk about natural language processing. So NLP, you must have heard the term NLP. But what NLP is and why it is important. So the second part, it's very important for India, that I will talk about. So NLP is your natural language, right? Whatever we speak. So we speak in English, we speak in Hindi. So that's our natural language. And how would the computer process that? So that's natural language processing. Whatever our natural language is, the computer would process it would understand it, and eventually then reply. Now, the basic difference is that maybe most of you are very tech savvy. So you know how to operate a computer, you can type a lot, you can maybe query a lot, but there are a lot of people who are not aware of that. And if they are not aware of that, it's not a good thing that they should be left outside the ecospace, right? Tech space. So for that, to actually break the barrier of entry, that they shouldn't be able to know, or maybe the prerequisite shouldn't be that they should be able to type on the keyboard. The prerequisite shouldn't be that they should know English in the first place. So to break that barrier, NLP came into picture. That you just talk, you don't need to learn anything. You just say whatever you want to. The machine will try to understand it and give you results. So that is where machine NLP was born. And now there are so many applications. And when I say it's very important for India, it's very important because we have so many languages in the first place. So anybody who's entering into the Indian market, so they already have machine translation, maybe from English, French, and everything. But now when they are entering the Indian market, they want people to interact in their own local language. And in India, there are so many local languages. So if suppose you're shopping, if you're on Flipkart, they cannot, Flipkart or maybe Amazon, you cannot assume that your user base is only talking in English. If you assume that, you will not sell a lot of products. You cannot assume that your user base is only talking in English and Hindi. If you assume that, you will not sell a lot of products. It could be any language, and you should be able to understand the user. That is why a lot of research work is going on NLP in India to understand local languages, so that at one point of time, the language barrier itself goes away. You talk in any language, the machine would understand and give you results. And based on that, it would be very easy for us too. If you are actually moving to a different state, you talk in their language. So you talk in your language, the machine will automatically translate and give it to them. Now, a lot of work is already done, and you would be seeing that, okay, I can talk in my local languages, but there are a lot of things to be covered in that place. It's not very accurate, or maybe it's not very correct. So that work is going on. But if you're working on NLP, there's a lot of opportunities in India. I'm not saying computer vision doesn't have, computer vision also has, but NLP, it's there and it would be there. So if you see the job openings as well, there would be a lot of job openings for NLP as well.
Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, Piyush, can you tell us how all these fields are related to each other, and how could we choose one field for us?
Okay.
Yeah.
So this we slightly discussed in the previous slide. So let's consider this. So when we talk about AI is the entire superset. So if we talk about if you say okay, let's start with AI. So you're starting with everything. Then you go to machine learning. Machine learning it is just one part of AI. There would be a lot of things that are not covered in machine learning, but it's a part of AI. Just to keep it simple for today, let's not talk about that. Let's focus on machine learning. Now, when we talk about machine learning and deep learning, so deep learning is nothing different from machine learning. Deep learning is itself machine learning, but deep learning is a small part of machine learning. So when people say, no, I don't like machine learning, I like deep learning. Deep learning is itself machine learning. So that differentiation we need to understand. Now the point is, what difference is there in machine learning and deep learning? So when we think about machine learning, what we are trying to do, machine learning in very simple terms, it's just an art to train machines to make them learn. To tell machines how should you, given a data, how should you start learning on your own. Human shouldn't tell you a bit by bit. Human should only tell you that this is how you should learn. Given enough data, you would be able to learn. That's machine learning. And now what deep learning is exactly the same, only the method via which they train or the method via which they learn, that differs. So in deep learning algorithm, that would be only related to a neural network, you can say. So if you're using a neural network, then you can think about a deep learning side of it. But if suppose you want to explore machine learning and not exactly deep learning in the initial phase, there are a lot of machine learning algorithms which don't use neural network. I don't know if you are aware of, but there are a lot of algorithms. You can think about k-means, you can think about decision trees, you can think about XGBoost, and a lot of it. I'm not talking about a lot of models because I'm aware that you are just beginning your journey. So let's not talk about models a lot, but let's see how you can start it. So the fundamental, what starting would be that in machine learning and deep learning, the fundamentals would be same, as in that you should know what a model is. You should know what training is. You should know how the model is being trained. You should know what a loss is. You should know fundamental things, how to evaluate a model. That is common between both the things. And once you are aware of that, then it's totally your choice that if you want to dive into machine learning first, you can go there. So there are a lot of machine learning algorithms. But if you say, okay, no, I would only deep down in a part of machine learning that's deep learning, and I will only work on neural networks, that's totally fine. But my advice would be try both. In the college time, you have the liberty to try everything. Try both. Try with machine learning first. So only the machine learning algorithms apart from deep learning. Try with that. And once you have a certain understanding of how the algorithms are working, then you will know, oh, this is one thing. Okay, this I have to do a lot. Then once you go to deep learning, you will understand, oh, this I don't need to do. It automatically is done for me. Something like that. And why deep learning is important nowadays, or maybe machine learning, why it even came into picture? Because a lot of companies a few years back, they were not using leveraging machine learning a lot. Machine learning is a very old field, but based on today's compute power that we have, and a lot many users are on tech platforms, so maybe we all have a smartphone right now, that is why machine learning is booming. So if which domain is right for you, at that level, at the college level, I won't suggest you that only work on certain domain. I would suggest you start from one thing and explore other parts as well. And while exploring, you will come to know what you like, what you don't like, and only then think about, okay, this is, so maybe 1 year you spent, you knew, I will spend 1 year and then I will explore. And once you have decided, okay, no, I like computer vision, then start building on computer vision. Start from the basics and till the end, whatever the cutting edge model, start working on it. Do hands-on programs and maybe have few projects there. In your college itself, there will be a lot of faculties who would be willing to maybe have a project, maybe your 4th year project into that. So till that time, explore everything. And once you're clear, maybe by 3rd year or maybe by mid of 3rd year, then start creating a project only on that piece. So you can start with that.
All right. Okay. So let's dive into that topic, which is what is machine learning. So, okay. Would you tell us about how you got into machine learning, how you got interested in machine learning?
Okay, so the motivation part I already told you that why what started or what was the turning point, because eventually when I was in college, that time machine learning was new for the college curriculum. So I did use a lot of algorithms, but I wasn't very fascinated at that moment of time. But when I actually worked on it, that time I realized what a machine learning application could do or what it could bring to the table. And that time I decided that I would be pursuing masters in machine learning domain. So when I was totally focused, after 2 years, I actually joined BITS, and I was focused that I would be only working on machine learning domain. So now let's talk about that when I started my machine learning journey. So initially in the first semester, so in BITS you have your own say. So there are certain electives in masters. So in electives, I was thinking of electing machine learning in the first semester itself, and they have one thing that you can actually audit any class. So what auditing is, that you can actually sit in any class and nobody would ask you to leave, or you are allowed to sit in any class and learn anything. And if suppose you think that you want to learn that officially, so you can put it on your grade sheet. If you don't want to do that, you can just start learning, and there won't be any grades for that subject. So initially I started with machine learning over there. And what I realized was there are a lot of basics to be covered before machine learning, which I hadn't covered. So that time I realized that this is not the right semester to pick machine learning, because there's a lot of math behind it, and there's a lot of maybe data mining algorithms that you should be aware of. And only after that I should actually pick machine learning. So I didn't take it in my first. I did audit it maybe for a couple of weeks, but I understood there are a few things that I'm lacking. So I started with those in the first semester, and then in the subsequent semesters I took ML. And there are a lot of platforms. So in BITS, what we used to do, the coding, everything. So the classes were divided, was in between as a lab component. In the lab component, we were developing algorithms. There was a coding component involved, and there was a theory part. So theory part used to covered by professors, lab component by TAs and all. And the third component was the evaluation part. So evaluation, they used to conduct contests on Kaggle platform. So we would be talking about different platforms. So they used to have their own problem statements on Kaggle, and we used to code it, and then it would be based on your score, you would be evaluated. So the entire machine learning class, maybe of maybe 200 students, and people who have taken it officially and people who have not taken it officially. So there I got to learn a lot, that how what are different machine learning algorithms, how do you train it, and from scratch. Now once I was doing that, there are a lot of research faculties. There were a lot of research faculties, and even if you are actually maybe mapping it to your college, your teachers, your faculties would be doing research. Not everybody would be doing research in ML, but there would be few who would be doing in ML. So you can actually talk to them what they are working on. Could you also maybe help in them, help in that project? And once you start doing it, so initially I know it might be you would be thinking there's a lot to learn, but start from one point and keep on learning, keep on learning, keep on learning, and eventually you will get there, and you won't even realize that you got there. But you need to start from somewhere. So how I started was that I was going through prerequisites, and whenever you're doing masters, you are supposed to opt for a TA. TA is teaching assistant. And how the TA works is that the labs that are being conducted, that are conducted by TAs. So professors take the actual theory part, labs are being conducted by TAs, and the coding part, that would be finalized by the TA and the professors. So I was very interested, and in my bachelor's, I had already taken data mining. So I went to the data mining prof, and I said I really want to be part of this course, and I want to be a TA for this. So he said, why are you interested? And then I gave my background and everything, and then I started as my TA journey in data mining. So that was one point, because I was so focused on ML, I knew that I don't want to be a TA of any other subject. It has to be from the data science domain. So I was a TA there, and the biggest point is, you might think that learning only comes from learning, but when you teach, you learn more. So while the prof was teaching, but the curriculum that we would need to verify it, or maybe while coding, or maybe while the lab sessions, we need to teach to all the BTech grads. So that time you learn a lot. So I learned a lot in that course, and eventually I did only my TAs in data science course. So in the first semester, I took data mining. In the second semester, I was a TA for AI. So that is how it started. And once I was very comfortable with that field, I actually discussed with the same prof. He was actually interested in ML. And I was discussing with him that I want to pursue ML and I want to pursue some research project in ML. And that time he was working in adversarial ML. Okay, so maybe adversarial ML as a term would not be very clear for you. So you can think about, let's take a very simple example. The cat and dog classifier that we talked about. So given a picture, a machine would tell you if it's a cat picture or if it's a dog picture. That's a very simple application. Now, what adversarial machine learning says, given a dog picture, how would you manipulate the dog picture so that the machine tells it's a cat? It's very simple that you are trying to fool the machine learning algorithms. Now, there are a lot of machine learning algorithms used everywhere. And that is why adversarial ML is a very, very booming field. Why? Because if so many machine learning algorithms are already placed and being run in production right now, and if you can fool that machine learning algorithm, then you can actually try to think that how will the hackers or maybe attackers exploit your system. Just for a very, very brief example, maybe it's if it's an autonomous vehicle. An autonomous vehicle is actually looking at different symbols, and there is a stop symbol. You can actually go and stick a tape to the stop symbol, and your computer vision algorithm won't even know that it's a stop signal. It might think it's a speeding up signal. So that is the portion where adversarial ML comes in. So he told me that he is working on adversarial ML. And I said, I am not very aware of adversarial ML, but I would definitely love to explore it. And then I started reading the few research papers and all. And then he said, okay, I have a project that I was already working in adversarial level, but I want to explore the reinforcement learning part. Until that point of time, I had no knowledge about reinforcement. I had only general basic idea what reinforcement learning is. And when he asked me that, would you be interested? I said, definitely I would be interested. The only point of consideration is that initially, maybe a month, I would take time to get the basics right and I would eventually learn and then only I would be able to contribute to the project more. He said, there is no problem. Everybody is learning. So you learn. And what he did was that he said, whatever you learn, every week, give me a presentation on that so that even my basics are getting cleared and you are also learning and we are on the same page. If your understanding is not correct, then I would be able to correct you. I said, okay. So initially it was very new. And then for RL, reinforcement learning, there are a lot of resources nowadays online. I went through that. I read a lot of blog posts, research papers and everything. And then I don't know if you guys are aware of OpenAI. OpenAI is a company. So OpenAI, they have OpenAI Gym. So what OpenAI Gym is, like a platform like Kaggle and all, OpenAI Gym is also a platform for reinforcement learning. So they already have predefined problem statements over there, and you can write your own reinforcement learning agents and check how good you are. So I did a lot of hands-on over there. And once I was very comfortable, we started with our project over there. So initially it was just a learning phase and learning more. So it was an exponential curve there. And once we had substantial results after exploring for maybe a semester or more than a semester, then we decided, okay, now we have substantial results. Let's publish those results. So that is the time when we started to formulate the research work into a research paper. And then two of my papers got accepted. And that was due to that professor who had faith in me that I told him that I don't know RL and I'm very new to adversarial learning, but he said everybody has to learn at some point of time. So if you are willing to devote your time, if you're willing to learn and not saying that I don't know it, because in research, everything is new. If you're willing to learn, that is the most important point. It's not that there are 10 things to cover. If you're willing to cover those 10 things, that's enough. So that is how I covered it. And that is how my papers got published. And post that, I worked in NetApp. So NetApp is a very good company. So NetApp, what they predominantly work on is cloud software and cloud backup software. In that, there are some portions of ML as well. So I was interned in NetApp for 6 months. Then I was working there. And eventually, one of my friends said that he was working in Qualcomm that time, Qualcomm R&D. And he said, we have a very good opportunity and we want a person who has a few research papers and who has already worked in ML domain. Are you interested? So I said, I've only started in NetApp a couple of months back. So it was maybe an year, and full time I was there for maybe 6 months. And he said, but it's a good opportunity. If you want, you can actually. Then he told me about the projects that Qualcomm is doing, and I was really interested because the future is edge computing. So I said, yeah, that's a good opportunity. And then I interviewed for Qualcomm, and then I started my journey in Qualcomm.
Okay, Piyush, could you tell us why one should do machine learning at all? I mean, what is the future scope of machine learning? Why should one be interested?
Okay, yeah, so that I can definitely tell. Based on the pictorial representation, people would be wondering that there's a lot of money in the field. That's true, that's not true. Let's discuss that. So, why should you do machine learning? So, okay, in your college days, explore everything, then focus. That's the first thing. Explore everything. Don't think it's UI, don't think it's backend, don't think I only want data science. Explore everything. Once you have explored it, then only focus on one domain. Okay, now let's talk about why should you do machine learning. So let's talk about the career opportunities. So few years back, only few companies or maybe a handful of companies were working. So I'm only considering India right now. If you go abroad, there are a lot of opportunities. But now, if you consider today's scenario, there are a lot of opportunities in India too. So career opportunities, you don't even need to think about it. There's a lot and lot and lot. And it's not only running your machine learning algorithms. If you're good with data, if you're good with data analysis, you could be a data analyst. If you're good with machine learning model, you could be a machine learning engineer, you could be a data scientist. There are so many opportunities. So career opportunities right now, there are a lot. And the kind of startups that are coming and the amount of startups that are coming to India right now, you have a lot of opportunities. The only thing is when you start and how early you start. The earlier you start, the more knowledge you would have till the time you are appearing for your first interview. And if we talk about the related fields that we have already covered in few of the slides, but if I talk about India, NLP jobs would be heavily used in India because we have so many languages and people are researching into this. So I don't know. So I don't really want to talk about advanced stuff here, but there is one thing known as cross mixing. Okay, so I'm talking about the current research work. So industry is actually facing problem in that is cross mixing or not cross mixing, or you can say code mixing. So what code mixing is, कि हमें क्या बताना है. Now what I did there, that I started in English, then I went to Hindi. Okay, this is code mixing. People generally just don't talk in English. They talk few lines in English, they talk few lines in the, they would just keep on jumping between two different languages. That is code mixing. Now, current research work is going into that because if your algorithm is thinking, okay, you're talking in English and I want to just output Hindi, and in between you switch to Hindi, the algorithm is getting confused at what you're even talking. So current research work is going into that. But from an Indian point of view, you don't need to worry about anything. You can go into NLP, you can go into computer vision. There are a lot of places where RL is also being used. So there is no limit to what you can do. It's only that you need to start at some point. Now, the high demand point, there's definitely a high demand, but don't think that only machine learning has high demand. If you're a software engineer, even then you will have high demand in terms of the kind of work that you and the kind of opportunities that you have. So high demand is everywhere. So it's even in software business as well. So because if you talk about machine learning is not only preparing models. If you think about it, it could be 50-50, 60-40, something like that based on the company that you're working in. 50% would be involved on deep learning models or maybe machine learning models. But 50% of your time would be normal software engineer work. That is deploying your models, analyzing your models, evaluating your models, creating the entire end-to-end pipeline. Because it's not that you just need to create a model and that's it. The company has to deploy that model so that people could use it. So there your software engineering skills would come into picture. So yeah, definitely machine learning is in high demand, but don't consider
So,
that. Yeah.
Yeah, Piyush. So now can you tell us about the some of the prerequisites what we will need to become a machine learning engineer?
Yeah, so there are a few prerequisites that you would like to have. So, okay, let's see this slide. So that's maths, data modeling, and programming. For the data modeling part, so data modeling is just actually using a tons and tons of data and maybe a lot of data and just modeling it, maybe visualizing it and understanding it. That is required. But the prerequisite, I would say, that's not a hard prerequisite here. The prerequisite could be math part. If you think about maths, you don't need to cover the entire spectrum. Just cover some part of it. That part is very relevant. So if I tell you maybe just top of my mind, it would be linear algebra. Now I know linear algebra would be, you must have read maybe few years back. That's important. Maybe in M1, maybe in first year, you would be learning again. So you must have learned it again. So that's linear algebra, it's important. And the other thing is calculus. Once these two are done, then you can eventually do statistics, probability, everything. That's important. But start with linear algebra and calculus. That's important. Why linear algebra? Because when we are actually calculating, when you actually go to machine learning theory, a lot of it is being used. So matrix. If you know what matrix are, they are being heavily used. So for that, you should need matrix operation and all. And then if you actually think about deep learning, you're actually training the machine learning model, then calculating the loss, and then doing the back prop. I won't use a lot of fancy terms, but if you do the back prop, there is the differentiation happening, checking if your machine learning model is running properly or not. So that time you would need calculus. So maths is really important. That's a hard prerequisite. So initially you can use libraries and start working on that, but you would eventually to succeed in this field, you would need the mathematical part as well. Data modeling we have already covered, and the programming aspect of it. Now you're not bound to use any one framework or maybe one language. It could be C, it could be C++, it could be Python, it could be anything. So you're not bound with that. So programming is a prerequisite. Okay, yeah, this slide would
Yeah,
cover
Piyush.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, Piyush.
carry on.
As there are many other programming languages, so can you please specify which language would be a better choice, or which language should people choose to go with?
Okay, okay. So let's talk about the image that you have displayed, Raman. So one thing is we have R, we have Python, we have Java, we have C++, and we have so many more, Golang and this and that. Okay. Language is not a barrier to machine learning. Okay. Machine learning, what machine learning is, fundamentally what machine learning is, that you are trying to teach machine how to learn. That's it. So in any programming language in this world, if you can try and tell the machine learning algorithm how to learn, that's it. Now, why Python is famous and other things, Python is famous and maybe Java and everything. So majority of the machine learning libraries are being built around Python or were built around Python. Now, even if you pick Java, you will have machine learning libraries. That is why Python and R were famous that time. And even they are now, because all the major libraries, it's a very tight integration with Python. So you can easily deep down with Python. If you are actually exploring the data set initially, you can use R as well. So programming language is not a barrier. If you say I'm very good in Java, no issues. Take any good library, machine learning library, and you can use Java code, because machine learning is not constrained on based on what language you take. Internally, if it gives you a library via which you can tell the machine how good the machine is performing, via which you can tell the machine how to train, that's good enough. So machine learning, there is no prerequisite as in programming language point of view. You can start with anything, but from a suggestion point of view, if you're starting, try Python first. You can eventually go to Java. That's totally up to your choice. But if you're starting, try Python first. You will get a lot of examples because Python and machine learning has a very tight integration. So you will get a lot of examples and maybe code walkthroughs and maybe video lectures on that. So try with that, and eventually you can go to Java, you can go to C++. That's totally up to you.
Piyush, out of curiosity, what language do you use right now?
So yeah, that's the thing. So I use Python because there are a lot of tools being built on Python. Now the thing is, if you want to run things very fast, and Qualcomm is doing that in deployment scenario. Anything that has to run fast has to be in C++, C++. That's hands down. You cannot replace C++ right now. So we are working with Python. We are working C++. So whenever there is speed involved, total speed that it has to run in microseconds, we use C++. And whenever it's the tool chaining or maybe the initial pipelining, we use Python. And apart from that, maybe to create machine learning algorithms, we use TensorFlow, we use PyTorch, and we support few more. So I don't think so. You guys must be aware of Onyx or maybe Caffe. So let's not talk about that. But TensorFlow and PyTorch, these are two distinct frameworks that people are using to create machine learning models that we use. So currently my work involves around deep learning. That's why these are the frameworks. But if you're actually diving deep into machine learning models or maybe machine learning algorithms like maybe decision trees, other models. So not the deep learning models, you can actually explore the scikit-learn library, sklearn. That's a very good library to start with. And one point I would really like to make is don't only use the library. Whenever you actually go to the documentation page of the library, once the explanation is given, they usually give you examples. And in the end, or maybe in the beginning, they definitely provide you some reference link to the research paper from where they picked the algorithm. I know reading a research paper initially in college is not very easy. Try to just scan through the reference paper. How do you scan through a reference paper? Only read the abstract, only read the result. That's it. If you are interested, after reading the abstract, you will know, oh, what is it? After reading the result, you will know how good it is. Then try to go with the experiment. That's it. If you go with 5 papers, the 6th paper would be really easy for you because the prerequisites are already covered in this 5. So just try to go through over not all the research papers, but if suppose you are learning decision trees, at least read how they come up with it, how they what they were thinking or what was the advantages of it. So you can go through that. And the other point was top companies using Python. Yeah, a lot of companies are using Python. So you can definitely start your journey with Python, but programming language is not a barrier to machine learning.
Yeah. So
Anywhere,
yes,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So now, yeah. So could you elaborate some of there are the phase where the people starts to learn the theory of machine learning, and
Hmm.
when they get confused,
Hmm.
many of them stops to learn machine learning or they stop their journey. So how would they proceed with that?
Okay, okay. So the thing is, the main issue with machine learning theory is it's vast. First question, it's really vast. If you think that I will cover the theory and then maybe start my hands-on, most probably your bachelor's would be over and the theory is not finished. So it's that vast. What you could actually do is you can pick one part of it, just focus on one part. Say let's talk about linear regression. So just think about that. I will start only with linear regression. I will cover up the theory and I will do the hands-on. Once this part is complete, the hands-on part and the theory part, then move on to the theory and hands-on. You cannot cover the entire theory once and then go to hands-on. It has to go hand in hand. Now in machine learning theory, there are a lot of places where you can learn. For the theory part, there are a lot of books that you can read. There are a lot of video lectures that you can go through. There are a lot of maybe places where you can actually talk to people. There are a lot of communities you can talk to people. And then there would be places like different faculties which you can talk to if you have issues, if you have queries. And yeah, even I face this. There are a lot of places online where you would type a question, they will give you the answer, but you won't understand the answer because the answer is as complicated as the question. So that was one point because when I even started, so I started one channel. So I am not able to devote a lot of time because I started recently. I would be devoting time in a couple of months. But when I started that, I wanted to create a community because what I faced was my questions were slightly different what was being asked online, and I wasn't understanding what the question was and the answer. People used to write lengthy explanation with mathematical notations and everything. So anything you want to make complex, write a mathematical notation. Half of the people won't even understand that. That is the point. So discuss with your colleagues, form a group. That is the biggest. If you try to learn from your peers, because they would have the similar kind of understanding. If you learn from somebody who already has 25 years of domain knowledge, he would tell you things at his level, and that might not be very relevant for you. So discussion is very important. In machine learning theory, you will definitely have a lot of doubts. Discussion is very important. That could be a community based, that could be your faculty based. So that is important. And theory part would be theory hands-on, to be going in hand in hand. You cannot cover up the theory and then hands-on.
Yeah, so Piyush, so could you suggest us some of the places where we could practice or learn the machine learning?
Yeah, so currently there are a lot, tons and tons of places where you can actually practice. One of the places we have five recommendation over here. So you can go to HackerRank. You have the AI rank, HackerRank. Yeah, you have the AI section. You can try to practice there. Kaggle is one of the platform that they have the starting courses as well. Kaggle calls it micro courses. You can start with the micro courses. They have a lot of courses. You will get to learn a lot from machine learning, deep learning, AI, and there's a lot of things. So you can go to that place and learn. Hacker Earth has a lot of competitions very regularly conducted by different companies. You can try to solve those. Crowd AI is a very, very good site where you can get machine learning problems. Now, the biggest problem, or maybe when I started Think Big with AI, I used to get a lot of queries related from students itself, how to get experience in machine learning. Because once you are creating your resume or CV, you would need to portray some of the projects that you have done. So how to get a good problem statement, that was the barrier of entry. You can go to sites like Crowd AI. They have very good problem statements. Take one. It would definitely take a lot of time to maybe get the data, gather. They would be giving you the data, gathering it. Maybe it would take a month, 2 months, 3 months. Solve that completely. And once you have solved it, discuss with people. This was my opinion. This was my way of solving it. How would you solve it? Discuss with the community over there. Once you have done that, that entire project is your experience in college for portraying. So if you put that in your CV, then you can tell anybody your interview that I worked for 3 months on this, what I learned, what I observed, and based on this, what I think I would do in future, something like that. So that is one point of thing that people used to ask me, what should I work on? How should I get the problem statement? Because problem statement, getting the right problem statement is not very easy, but there are sites giving you that. And then the fifth one is Hugging Face. If you are very interested in NLP, you can actually explore it and you will get to learn a lot.
Rohan, could you move to the next slide?
Yeah, because we have already covered a lot of
Yes,
it.
we have covered this, right?
Yeah.
Also, the next one. Right. Okay. So some projects that could that people could get involved in. So
Yeah.
would you suggest some, and which one you have worked on, like when you were learning?
Okay. So there are a lot of projects mentioned over here. I would suggest work anything that you're interested in, because eventually, maybe 1 month or 2 months down the line, you should be interested or motivated on working on that. It could be a very real life project. Work anything that you're interested in, not because the data set is available or maybe the solution is available or it's very easy. Work on anything, because machine learning, it totally depends. If you have a correct application, you can start working on that. That's totally fine from your point of view. Now the thing is, what I have worked on, I initially, when I started, I told you guys that I heavily worked on NLP. So I started with that, and eventually when I came to know, okay, now I like machine learning, then I went to college. And in my curriculum, in my research work, I was focusing on deep learning side, deep learning and machine learning both. And then I switched to adversarial machine learning. So adversarial machine learning, I told you that what an adversarial machine learning is. We are thinking from an hacker's point of view, how would they try to break machine learning models? And then we were trying to improve machine learning models so that people cannot break it. And eventually I actually started the reinforcement learning agent. And then we actually did our research work. So what my project is, based on anything. So let's give you a very simple example. So you must be using smartphones. You have your Play Store, Google Play Store, you have your Apple Store. Now in Google Play Store, there are a lot, tons and tons of machine learning, not machine learning, normal Android apps being uploaded every day. It's not possible for a single entity to go and check if the app is malicious or not. And when I say malicious, it's a bad app. as in it might steal your data or it might do something else, something like that. It's not possible for human beings just to maybe taking 100 people and just scan every app every day. It's not possible because the amount of apps getting uploaded, it's huge. So what adversarial ML would do, it would keep a barrier around the Play Store. And whenever an app is uploaded, it would automatically identify what the app is doing. And based on that, try to check if the app is good or not. That was the initial phase. What adversarial ML, what we are trying to do, we are trying to take a malicious app. That is, it's already bad. We know that it's bad, it's doing something bad. We will take that. And based on our algorithm, that is our agent, reinforcement learning agent, we will try to modify the application. We will try to modify the application in a way that Play Store doesn't understand it's a bad application. So we will take a bad application that's a malicious application that is maybe hacking your data or maybe something. We will try to modify some bits of it and then try to give it to the classifier. If the classifier says no, it's still a bad application, then we will take it again. We will try to modify it again and then give it. And one point of time, we got to know that machine learning algorithms started recognizing it as a good app. And even though it was a bad app, and that was the research work, and we were trying to stop that. So to understand first, what changes could you make to a bad application so that a machine learning model don't even understand that it's a bad application. It thinks, oh, it's a good application. Let's put it on Play Store and millions of people would download it. So that's what the research was, that we were trying to identify how to convert a bad to a good, and then whatever the rules or maybe whatever insights that we get, that we could give it to the machine learning model so that they don't get fooled by hackers outside. Yes, but now based on these applications, there's a lot. You can pick anything. So start with a very basic application. Maybe stock price prediction is there, credit card detection, fraud detection. Yeah, whenever you are beginning, right? Always take a data set already available. So there are multiple sites. Take the data set from there, and the data set should be simple, because while in the learning phase, you shouldn't be very maybe stuck with the data set, that the data set itself has a lot of issues. That's the beginner part. And eventually, when you are very comfortable with the modeling part and visualizing part and getting the results, then go on a notch more, get a very dirty data set. Dirty in the sense, the real world data set, it's not clean at all. You need to do a lot of pre-processing, just even before you write one statement, right? Or maybe if you even think about modeling the data, before that you need to clean the data. So go there, but go at the advanced level. And there are a lot of applications mentioned over there, but I would suggest whatever you feel motivated on. It could be a real life scenario. It could be something that you think, okay, maybe in college I could use this machine learning algorithm to maybe make something, make that, because that you would be motivated on to actually finish it completely. And once you do that, and if you don't have a problem statement, there are a lot of places where you can get the problem statement. Once you do that, complete that entirely. Once you have done that, that is your experience in machine learning in your college, that you can use it in your resume.
Okay, so moving forward, what are some opportunities after machine learning? After you do machine learning, after you learn the theory, what are some things that you could do?
Okay, so there are a lot of opportunities. So yeah, so let's talk about the research part. Now, research, there are two different things. You can work as a researcher. The second thing is a TA, that is teaching assistant, because in teaching assistant in colleges, what the teaching assistant is doing, it is helping the prof or the faculty in actually teaching the students. So they are taking the lab sessions and everything, and they are even helping the prof in the research work side. And there is RA. The RA is totally focused on research work, that is research assistant. So if you are only interested in research work, you can try to be a researcher somewhere. But initially, there is always a barrier that how should I get into it? Who would give me an opportunity? So for you, it's very easy to get a 6 months internship as an RA in any top universities in India. So if you talk about IISc, okay, IISc Bangalore, let's talk about it. So the profs there post on, so it could be LinkedIn if you have friends there, or if you just go to IISc website, you can have the professor's email ID. You can directly email them officially, not just spamming them. You can officially email them regarding opportunities. So they usually have a lot of projects which they tell students that it's a 6-month project. You could be a research assistant here in this lab, and you would be working on this problem statement. So that would be from the research point of view. Suppose if you don't want to go into master's or PhD, you can start with that. 6 months when you have covered, you would know that do you even like research work or not. If you like it, good enough, you can go for masters, you can go for PhD. And one more thing, after bachelor's, you can directly go to PhD. There's no way there is compulsion that you need to do masters. So if you're really interested and if your faculty is allowing you to take you as a student, you can directly go to PhD. So once you are comfortable with that, I would try to say go for a 6 month internship as an RA in any of the institute. And then you would learn, okay, do I like research work or not? If you like it, good. If you don't like it, you have already maybe tried it out, and it's good to explore. And that would definitely count as an experience in your CV. So that there's no loss over there. So you can try with that. And if I actually come for the higher studies part, higher studies, you have so many opportunities. So you can actually go move abroad. You can, there are so many universities there. You can actually maybe work on different labs, different domains. In India, if I talk about, you can actually start preparing for GATE. And there are GATE and there are several other exams also. So it's a BitSat, Triple IT has their own exam, Triple IT Hyderabad. You can actually start preparing for that. So even if you prepare for GATE, it's not that you just want to maybe crack the competitive exam and then you would need to go for masters. Just preparing for that would eventually make you stronger in your fundamentals. Okay, so that is one of the opportunity. And once you enter that, and if you're focused, there are so many faculties, you can actually talk to them and then they will give you a brief idea about what they do, and then you can start working with them and explore that domain. And it could turn out to be a research work, a publication point of view, or it could be turning out to maybe you would be an RA or maybe TA in some of the classes, but you would learn in both the cases. Yeah, so this was the research in high studies. Yeah, is there any specific question?
Yeah, Piyush, actually, I wanted to ask a question. So, do recruiters prefer you if you as a candidate if you have a master's in machine learning or something?
Asta, could you repeat the question again?
Right. Would recruiters prefer you as a candidate if you have a master's?
Okay, so that totally depends on the kind of role. So if it's totally a modeling based role, that is you are only creating machine learning models, so there is a preference given to master's grad, definitely, because they have worked on masters, they have published few papers. That's why there's a slight preference given, but there is no barrier as such. If you see any of the companies, name it Google, Microsoft, Amazon, any company, LinkedIn and all, they have no barrier that you need to. It's always a preference. It's preferred to have masters, but if you have bachelors with significant experience in that domain, it's totally fine. Yeah, that significant experience part is required.
So Piyush, as this event is on machine learning engineers, so could you share your experience and your interview rounds of a machine learning engineer and your tips for the audience?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question, and that's one of the question I was being asked a lot by students on LinkedIn. So what happens that, okay, you are a machine learning engineer, good. Always think of yourself as a software engineer first. Once you are a software engineer, then you are a machine learning engineer. After that, the first point of barrier is software engineer. Don't think I'm only a machine learning engineer, I don't care about the software engineering part. This is important. First, you're a software engineer, then you are a machine learning engineer. By that, what I mean is you cannot skip data structures and algorithm. In any company, in any startup, any product-based company, you name the company, initial rounds would be on data structures and algorithm. If you are not good in problem solving, that's a red flag. You need to be good in problem solving skills. You need to have certain knowledge about coding. I'm not saying totally engrossed in competitive coding, but you need to be aware of what data structures are, how to calculate time complexity, what different types of algorithms are. Given a scenario, can you think about how to use a data structures and solve the problem? That is a prerequisite. An initial round, maybe at least one round would be on problem solving. And that would be the initial round. So if you're not good at problem solving, then the initial barrier itself is gone. You would not even reach the machine learning interview stage. Okay. So that is very important. You cannot skip that part. Once that is clear, the second point would be machine learning. So machine learning theory and maths. So math, you can actually cover few of the topics. So it could be linear algebra, matrices, operation and everything, calculus, differentiation and everything, and some part of probability and some part of statistics. It's not very in depth because even they know nobody can cover in depth everything. So it could be brief, some part of it, but the fundamentals, how it works, that should be clear. Even in machine learning, if you're in an interview, so if you're a fresher and you are applying there and you are interviewing, they won't ask you questions like, if given a computer vision model, these are the layers, what would you do this? This is not a very standard question. They would start from basics. If you're really good in basics, they know that if a person is really good in basics, he can eventually learn, because everything else is, the basics is the building block. If you know, if your basics are really good, you can read the research paper and you can understand. But if the basics are flawed, then even if you have created 10 applications in computer vision, 10 applications in NLP, that wouldn't stand, because if anything new comes, the basics are not there. So how would you learn? So that's the point. Focus on data structures and algorithm, focus on theory part and hands-on part. You cannot skip algorithms and data structures. That is mandatory.
All right, so we are open to take questions from the audience now. So are there any questions?
Okay, so Rohan, could you please just stop the presentation and like change the setting so that like everyone in the attendees can unmute themselves. Those who are not comfortable turning their mic on, you can just type your question in the chat box.
Right, yeah. They'll be able to type in the chat box. If they specifically need to ask a question, they can raise their hand so I can unmute that specific person.
All right, Piyush, I have one question.
Okay.
Okay, how important is it to like attend contests like held on Kaggle or anything?
So it's important, but for beginners, I wouldn't suggest go through the prerequisite first. Understand, because in context you have a stipulated amount of time, right? In that time, you cannot start learning and then doing. So do the learning part first, and once you are slightly comfortable, then go to contest. And the contest is also one thing that you're not just competing, you are there to learn. So once that is over, actually see notebooks, what the winners have created, and learn from that, what they have used differently and what you have not used. So initially there would be a drastic gap, and eventually when you start learning, that gap would reduce and you will get there. But initially, rather than the contest, I would say go for the learning part and then go to contest. Don't set a time limit that in 10 days you have to finish that, because that's not the learning phase. You're just competing. Learn first, then you will understand. Because if you're not comfortable with the theory, then how will you change and tweak your machine learning model to do a certain thing?
Okay, so we have a few questions. So what tools would you suggest for data cleaning? Is OpenRefine the best?
Okay, so there is nothing best in data science. So anything best today would be get beaten maybe tomorrow or maybe day after tomorrow. Anything that you're comfortable with, anything that you know, if suppose you want to perform 10 operations and you know if you use a library A and you can perform these 10 operations very quickly, use that library. There is nothing best. Anything that you're comfortable in, use that. Because your end goal is not to clean the data. Your end goal is to solve your problem. So any tool that you're comfortable with, use that.
All right, the next question. Would you please repeat in short what is data modeling?
Okay. So I actually told you that's not a hard prerequisite. So that's why I didn't cover it. But what you can visualize data modeling is that you have data and then you're modeling it to it. And modeling as in you're taking a lot of data and checking what kind of data it is, visualizing it. So in the beginning sense, whenever a data scientist actually get the data, they would definitely try to visualize it and check how the data is. Maybe the data is flawed. Maybe there are a lot of outliers. So that comes in modeling. There is a lot of things. I cannot tell you everything here, but yeah, you get a brief idea of what data modeling is.
Yeah, Piyush, one question from my side, that
Yeah.
that as machine learning interviews, how to prepare for machine learning interviews, because as machine learning interviews can also vary depending on the hiring team and the manager. So how would we able to prepare for different interviews?
Okay. So first thing would be prepare for generic terms, as in prepare a generic type of preparation would be for all the companies. And once you know that you are preparing for a certain company, then go for that. So the generic would be data structures and algorithm, machine learning basics. And then if you are comfortable in deep learning, then deep learning basics. If suppose your resume doesn't have deep learning, no need to worry. You can say I've only worked in machine learning. If your resume has deep learning, whatever your resume has, you need to be very thorough in that. If suppose you are doubting your skills in reinforcement learning, don't even write it there. Because if you write it there and then they ask, then they would even doubt at the point where you are comfortable in. So first preparation should be generic, that is algorithms, data structures, and core machine learning, fundamentals of deep learning. That's it. Once you're comfortable in this, then you can explore to computer vision or NLP.
Okay, so the next question, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Which college would you suggest for MS in this field, according to you?
Oh, that totally depends. So I would suggest to start preparing, and then based on your score, whatever colleges you have, then check what kind of faculties are there in the college. This is how you actually categorize, and what kind of faculties are there, what kind of research work they are there. And based on that, you will get to know what labs are there, what funding is there, what kind of projects they are working on, and whichever project suits you and you are interested in, pick on based on that. You cannot just say that this college is good in this, that's it. It totally depends on the faculty as well, because eventually you will be working under that professor, right? So you should know what professors are there. Maybe if there are 10 faculties, what their research area is, and are you interested in that? And it would be really easy for you to connect students from that campus, and they would tell you more, because online you will have maybe 10 things, maybe they are doing 50 things, so they would tell you more, and then you can take a better decision.
Okay, so for the next question, what is the connection between ML and cloud computing, and scope of cloud computing in ML? Is it, if it is necessary, then why?
Okay, so I can actually differentiate these. Cloud computing and ML are totally different. So if you are not interested in ML, you can still go to cloud computing. If you're not interested in cloud computing, you can still go to ML. So these are two different things. Now, if you want to club it, as in you want to train an algorithm and you want to put it in cloud, that is the time when you need both the things. So any cloud company, if you think about you want to work in Microsoft, and if you want to think you are working in Azure, maybe Azure team, then you can think about clubbing them both. But is it necessary? It's not. You can go in an independent way. You can just say, I'm a machine learning engineer, I can work anywhere. And or you can say, I'm a machine learning engineer who loves to work on cloud products. So you can go there.
Okay, so for the last question, can you suggest some resources to start ML learning?
Oh, there are a lot of resources in ML. Nowadays, there are a lot of resources. But what I would suggest is go to the basic resource first, as in the fundamental part first. So you can actually do a lot of courses on Coursera. That's a go-to platform. There are multiple platforms. EDX is there. So there are different platforms. Now, which platform suits you? I cannot tell you that. You need to go through a certain platforms, go through a certain courses. Then you will get to know which one do you like. But try to do few and then try to do hands-on. So resources would be research papers. I know it's not very easy right now. So go through blogs and different books. That would be the first thing. And video courses. That would be the second thing. Once you're clear with that, start reading few of the research papers so that you know what the field is all about and how they started.
Yeah, Piyush. And one more question from the crowd, that what is model deployment and why should I learn about it?
What is model deployment? Okay,
Yeah,
that's a good question. Okay, so what is model deployment? So you train a machine learning model. So you have a machine learning model. What would you do with that machine learning model? That's in your system. You need to place it somewhere so that people could use it. Placing it that somewhere so that people could use it, that is deployment. That you're deploying the model at some place so that people could use it. That is model deployment, one thing. Second part of the question, why do you need to learn it? You may not learn it, but if you don't learn it, how would you deploy it? And if you don't deploy it, how would people use it? So that's why you need to learn it. But it totally depends on your team and the kind of company that you're working in. Maybe in some companies, they would ask you to deploy a model yourself, or in some companies, they have a specific team for modeling that you would only be interested in creating the models. And then you would give it to a certain team, which will take the models and maybe see the deployment part, evaluation part, and maybe creating the pipeline something. It totally depends. But do you need to have the knowledge? Yes, you should. As a machine learning engineer, you should know where your model is eventually going to go and how you should deploy it.
All right, so let's conclude then. This has been a very informative session. Thank you so much, Piyush. And just a few last words, if you would like to say something to people who are starting out or people who are already stuck in somewhere. So would you say something?
Yeah, so first thing, it is always great to interact with the college students, because when I was there, even I was excited to know about what the current research is going on, how people are doing, what they are working in industry on. And being an alumni of the college itself, it's great to talk to students there. One thing I would say, never stop exploring. That is the biggest point. Today, computer vision is booming. Tomorrow, it might not be. Tomorrow, it would be something else. It would be reinforcement learning, something else. Just giving an example. Never stop learning. Always explore in your college life. Explore every field and then decide where you wanna move. That is one point. And once you focus on certain things, start from basics. Your basics or your fundamentals should be clear. Only then you can go to advanced topic. I know solving advanced questions or creating advanced application seems good, but that wouldn't help if you don't know the basics. So always the basics would definitely need some time. Give that time. Once you are covered with that, then maybe you wouldn't face any issues even if a new domain comes up.
Okay,
And one more thing, yeah. Based on this, I faced a lot of difficulties, that there are certain doubts that maybe you are not comfortable in asking publicly on a public platform, and maybe there are certain things which you don't know how to formulate in a manner so that it could be answered by someone from the community online. So you could definitely reach out to me. I'm not saying that I would be able to justify everybody, because I'm quite busy in the office the Monday to Friday time. But definitely, if there are a lot of queries in some regard, I would definitely try to help you. Because I know there was a point for me also, that when I was trying to learn a lot of things, and I was getting stuck in a lot of things, and there were significant doubts. So it could be doubt in theory, it could be doubt how to start, it could be doubt with a library or anything. And if you don't get a very specific answer to your specific doubt, then you're stuck in that maybe for a couple of days and all. So for that, you can actually connect, and most of your answers and Raman could actually share you. So I am actually active on LinkedIn. So I have a page on LinkedIn. I have a page on Insta as well. So you can connect with me on that. And if suppose there is a significant amount of doubt on a certain section, then eventually I'm the alumni of the college, so I won't have any issues taking few more sessions for you guys. But the first thing is start yourself. Once you start, only then you will understand what you know, what you don't know. So starting is one thing and exploring is one thing. You cannot stop any of it.
Okay, so Piyush, before you go, I'd just like to say that I've watched your videos and they're very good. I mean, you have explained complex concepts in a very easy way that is very understandable even for beginners. So I think that is a really good resource. So I hope you keep making videos, and if actually anybody wants to learn something, so you could check out his videos. So they are great, and we would provide the links on the chat box. So yeah, thank you so much, Piyush, for today. This has been great, and I really hope we could do this some other time as well, because we all need guidance from time to time. And thank you so much.
It was a pleasure having you, Piyush.
Same here.
And thanks for making time in your busy schedule. We
Yeah,
owe you a
it's the
special vote
weekend.
of thanks for that.
All right, so let's conclude this.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope that we have cleared most of your doubts. And if not, Piyush has there's a link provided on the chat box, so please go through that and reach out to Piyush if you may.
Yeah, one more thing. So link that is provided, that's my personal LinkedIn handle. There are a specific ThinkBig with AI handles. That's the LinkedIn handle as well as the Insta handle.
Yeah,
So
sure.
most,
I'll
yeah.
share those two.
So you can connect me on that. So I would know that's a doubt problem thing, and then I will answer in that way.
Yeah, we have shared the Insta handle also. Yes.
Okay. So there's a specific LinkedIn handle also for ThinkBig with AI. You can share with that also.
Yes, we can share that too, and also in the GDSC groups and our Discord server. And also, we'll be providing the recording of this session. So those who have missed the session, don't worry. You'll get to see the recording on our YouTube channel. So thanks again, Piyush. So let's conclude this session. Everybody can you can leave this session.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Piyush.